if you want any other topics or subtopics to be covered also, you can certainly let me know. All right. So with that, what's the agenda for the day? Okay. So we'll first look at what are the major objectives of this session. The objectives as I see it, or what I wanted to cover, I'll just you know uh, talk through that. And of course, if, as I said, if you want to me to talk about anything else in detail, we can also take that up, right? So primarily we'll look at work profiles. Okay, so work profile of an engineer in a computer science or an IT field today, and how it's going to be different tomorrow, or how is it gradually changing over time. Okay, and then digital transformation. We'll talk about the main topic for the day. What is it and how it's going to change all the jobs. I mean, I cover these topics for engineers, I cover it for MBAs. I also talk with even research students as well, right? So how digital transformation is going to impact every career stream, we'll take a look of that at that. What will be the impact of it? And of course, we'll talk about the also the COVID scenario that has been unleashed this year. And we'll also discuss what are the major careers that are likely to be in demand in the coming years, and some of the other critical skills that you will need along the way. Okay, so that's broadly the roadmap that I have planned to cover today. Well, I had a brief intro slide, but you have already heard about me, so I won't go into too many details. So my job primarily is to be a senior IT strategist. Okay, I work with all our customers as well as solution teams. So I'm the go-between person. I look after all the new solution development and IP development for entity data, and I I interact heavily with our customers as well. So I try to understand what are the areas that they are looking at, what are the thoughts or worries that the CIOs are thinking of today, and then try to relate them back to which solution would best fit which organization, or what do we do that, right? So also advisory services. I kind of I'm on the advisory of several organizations of our customers as well. But most of my career, the core area that I have spent most of my years with is SAP. Okay, so I'm a SAP platform person, and that's how I started my life as an SAP person. Right now, I'm more technology agnostic. I'm moving through IoT, machine learning, RPA, analytics, and such new fields. I'm also an author. I have published a book way back in 2011 or 12 when I was in the US. And this is a hardcore book on SAP. So it talks about how to configure SAP and such other things. My book is sold worldwide in over 32 countries. Okay. So that's the brief about me. Now, moving to uh, the questions that you might be having. Why should I attend this session? What's in it really for me that will really make some value add for me, right? So some questions are really, what is this digital transformation, and will I really be impacted? I'm going to join a certain organization, a company, or whatever is your plan, right? Will it really affect me? Is it something that is discussed at the top levels of organizations and businesses, right? And they devise new models and so on. But as an engineer, individual engineer, or as an individual contributor, will it really impact you, right? And the answer is yes. We'll see how. Uh, should I really be bothered about the trends of tomorrow? I have a secure job today, right? When you are, I agree, when you join any organization, you will be given a very specific job title and a job role. This is what you're going to do. Maybe you're going to be development, you're going to be in code testing, you might be quality assurance, right? But everybody will see how everybody will get impacted sooner or later by this digital transformation, right? And the third common misconception that people have, well, I'll manage it. I'll manage this change whenever it comes. Why should I bother today, right? So we'll take a look at all of this. Um, so before we proceed, here is one thing, right? You have been students for the last year, 3, 4 years, and now you have been in the habit of studying new books or new topics that are there as part of your curriculum, and going beyond that as well. Some of you must be also reading technical journals or following blogs and websites. But what has been seen is the moment people enter the industry, this habit of learning goes down. Maybe you will be caught up with your own work and your routine at work. So you gradually wean away from staying in touch with what is new. Okay. And that's where the lag starts setting in. So you slowly start falling behind what is latest in the industry. Okay. So think of it in this way. There are many topics in demand today, right? Things like IoT, okay, or machine learning. These topics did not even exist 10 years ago. If you were to look at the textbooks from 10 years ago, there might have been hardly some pioneering white papers written on these subjects. But today people are working in these areas, they're developing new solutions. So how did they learn? So you have to keep on learning. That's what is most important. So I'll give a very common analogy to those who are a little bit skeptical about it. I believe many of you would be having some senior citizens in your homes, right? Or in your neighborhood. So when you look at their reactions, when typically you give them a simple thing such as a smartphone, I know even kids are experts in installing and running all the fantastic apps on a smartphone. But what happens to a senior citizen? They get lost. I mean, oh, is this a device that is not just for making phone calls? Okay, it has Google Maps in it. It will show me the way. It has so many payment apps. It has photograph. It's a camera. It's so many things inside it, and they get baffled, right? So why is that? Because slowly, as years have gone, some of them, I mean, again, I've seen many senior citizens who are also equally experts in handling phones, but many of them face this challenge. They get baffled. It just becomes too much for them because the gap is now so big that they feel overwhelmed, they feel outdated, and they feel confused. And believe me, this happens to everybody. It will happen to you also. A few years down the line, if you do not stay in touch with what's latest, the same symptoms will happen to you. It's just a matter of time. And the pace of technology is only going to change more and more rapidly. It's not going to slow down at all. So that's why I always emphasize to my students that it's extremely important to be aware, be cognizant of digital transformation and the different ways in it is actually impacting the industries around you, right? So here's a quick question for all of you. Maybe, I mean, had this been again in a classroom, maybe we could have been more interactive. But look at these logos that you see here. Do you still recognize these companies? And if you do, can you tell me what was common across the board here? Maybe some of these logos are not any familiar because they're not in the mainstream media today. But Nokia, right? Nokia was the original manufacturer of mobile phones. Sturdy, robust mobile phones that will never break, that will never fail, no matter how you use or abuse it, right? Kodak, the pioneers of photography. They invented the photographic film, the entire technology behind it, even films used in movies, right? So Kodak, a pioneering company, they were in the Fortune 100 for close to 100 years. A very, very leading company, right? Then the third logo is BlackBerry, right? It's a company called RIM, Research in Motion, based in Canada. They were the first inventors of the smartphone. It was not the iPhone, it was BlackBerry. An extremely sturdy, robust operating system and phones that could never be hacked. They cannot be hacked even today. Such a robust technology, right? Inventors of BlackBerry. And Yahoo. Yahoo was one of the original popular email platforms. And they had their own search engine, they have Yahoo Maps, and many other things that they had acquired. So the question is, what's common today amongst these? And the sad answer is all of them are obsolete today. They are like a dinosaur. They once ruled the world, they once were super powerful in their own area, but today you cannot find them anywhere. So, what went wrong? If big organizations can make the mistakes, right, in spite of so many brilliant brains sitting on their board of directors, right, even individuals fail in the same way. Just because you are at the top of your current technology today, or maybe you are completely a master of a certain technology today, does not mean that you will be successful tomorrow, because somebody else will come up. What happened to Nokia when other smartphone companies such as iPhone came into it? Both Nokia as well as BlackBerry chose to ignore it. They never thought that okay, somebody would launch a phone with a touch screen technology. Touch screen wasn't new. They had everything, but they never found the need to reinvent themselves. The tragedy of Kodak. Do you know who invented a digital camera? The digital camera is what basically wiped off Kodak. The old films and development is now done only by professionals. The tragedy is that Kodak themselves invented the digital camera. And then they thought, oh, my digital camera is maybe something that people will never need. Photographers would always love the film. And they just ignored it. Then look where they are today. It's filed for bankruptcy. The company is no longer there. Right? Likewise, Google came and they just wiped off Yahoo. They did everything much better than them. They had a new search engine which had a much more better algorithms behind it, and they just succeeded. So why am I sharing these slides with you today is always stay abreast of digital transformation. It is wiping off people, it is wiping off companies, it is always bringing in fresh talent, it is always bringing in creative ideas to the top. Okay, so that's my message to you, that we always be afraid, almost have a phobia for that technological obsolescence, and stay relevant to the industry and to their job profile. Okay, moving on. So let's take a look at a typical job profile. Okay, so a common survey that was conducted amongst managers, okay, shows that okay, what are the typical tasks that a manager does, right? If you look at it, 54% of the time, that's more than half a day every day, is spent in pure administrative coordination and control. Routine, mundane tasks take up almost half a day of all, or I can say major time of all, professionals in this field. Is that what they are really supposed to do? No, but the volume of work, volume of routine work is so much that almost half a day is gone in that. And what happens in the remaining time? 30% just goes in problem solving, mostly problem solving and just fixing things that are broken, just so that you can survive the day, right? And then 10% goes in strategy and innovation, and 7% goes in engaging with stakeholders and workers and people, right? So almost 50 and 30, 80% of the day, or you can at least say 75% of the day, is gone in just doing routine stuff. Is that really what will add value to you and your organization? Think about it. The answer is no, right? Only 10% of the time is spent on innovation, strategy, creating new ideas, brainstorming, which is really abysmally low. And believe me, this is the industry average. So there may be so many companies that are even worse than this, right? So people are literally running on a treadmill. That is what CIOs are saying. We have such a complex IT organization that we are literally running on a treadmill. We are working hard, but at the end of the day, we are in the same place where we started. Okay, so that is the major problem or the problem statement that digital transformation tries to address or is already addressing. So if you look at what will be important tomorrow, if you ask managers and CIOs, what do you think they want their people to be working on? The answer is 42% want people to learn digital and technology. This is where I'm coming from. So the significance tomorrow is how much in control and in an expert you are in digital and technology. Then comes creative thinking and experimentation. There's no shortage. Even you'll always be in demand for innovation, thinking in creative ways. That's how they want you to spend most of the day. And then there are new things like social networking, people development, collaboration. We'll touch upon these topics. These are even more interesting and challenging now in the post-lockdown world, where it looks like working from home and working remotely will be a norm rather than an exception. How do you do that? How do you network with your peers? How do you talk to your customers? All of this is going to be extremely challenging. But we'll just discuss on those things. But again, the top is you have to spend more and more time on digital and technology. That's what everybody is asking for tomorrow. So how will you get this time? That's the next question. You have only 8 hours, 10 hours, maybe maximum you might stretch yourself to 12 hours. Where will you get the time if you have so many routine tasks that you have to perform every day? And the answer there is automation. Very simple. With the advent of technology, we can now have so many bots, robots, and automated programs who can gradually take away the load of the routine tasks that you perform every day. And that is likely to set some time free for you to spend your time more productively in doing creative thinking and strategic thinking. If you look at these graphs, this is how the timeline goes, right? Right from 1960s to the present. At the beginning, if you look at this violet line, that is the repetitive task that a manager performs, right? Entire day is gone in that. Maybe in 60s you didn't even have a computer, right? So even those tasks of manually writing stuff down in a ledger, etc., were much more intensive. Now, over time, you have automation in some form or the other, right? It could be a simple calculator, it could be addition of the personal computer, the PC, right? Other things. So over time, more and more share of the day's work will be taken up by automation or automated whatever assistance you have. And as a result, the time that will be spent in the future on routine tasks should shrink to the minimum. And then whatever time is left free that time will go for doing high value tasks. And this trend will continue. This trend will continue. So through the industrial automation, business process automation, digital transformation, to the birth of intelligent enterprises, right? Everything is moving towards automation, and it will continue to do this way. Now, this causes a lot of worry and concern for some people. They feel, oh, my job is going to go away. Robots will rule the world. That's certainly not the case, right? It all depends on how capable you are in spending that time effectively in your creative thinking. So we'll take a look at these things also in more detail. But before we get ahead of ourselves, of course, I'll kind of review with you on what are the technology trends. What do we really mean by digital transformations? What are the technologies of today that are um, shaping this up? And I don't mean to go into too much into theory. You are, of course, uh, we have been studying this extensively, I believe, as part of your curriculum. So you know about it. But I'll share some more than the theoretical definitions. I'll try to share some live examples or some interesting projects that I have seen myself in these areas, or we are working on right now in these areas. Okay. So more than theory, we'll go into the practical applications of things. So if you ask me, there are three major pillars that are driving intelligent automation today. We earlier saw in the slide, right? What is that intelligent enterprise? So robotic process automation, okay, wherein you will have bots, as I said. They may not be really physical bots moving as you see in movies, of course, they're not the case. They'll be bots, they reside and they're programs that run and they take up whatever other routine tasks that you do today, right? They will mimic the process steps taken by the human counterparts. If you can do it, they'll do it better. Okay. So very, very basic tasks that take up your time will be taken up by the bots. Number two, machine learning, algorithmic computer driven automation, right? Here it's the capability of your machine to, to learn and predict the outcome based on algorithms, purely based on algorithms. If, for example, you say that a certain student has performed very well and his performance is improving in every semester, then you might just put a logical guess that, okay, if he moved from say 60% to 62% to 64%, in the next semester is likely to go to 66%. May be true, may not be true, but that's just based on the algorithm. You just traced his growth or her growth, right? So this is the foundation of machine learning. And what is artificial intelligence? So artificial intelligence is something that mimics human intelligence. So can a bot do it? Not essentially. A robot can mimic the actions that we take, whereas the artificial intelligence would actually enable the machines to think the way we think. Okay, so it's, for example, well, I'll come to the examples a little later. So it's based on the machine learning foundation, and it enables you to learn, reason, and also improve yourself. Self-corrective nature of these artificial intelligent machines sets them apart, basically. Okay, so those are some of the common foundational things, topics you're already familiar with. So I'm not going into the details of that. But there are many other things, of course, Internet of Things, there's big data, there's blockchain, there are smart devices, there is Industry 4.0, many other such concepts. But underlying foundation would be more or less aligned with these foundational pillars. Automation. Okay, so we talked about it in briefly, but it will be bots performing routine repetitive tasks. But there will be three types of tasks. Okay, three types of bots, or three types of you can say areas or fields in which this will span across. One is the interactive bots, okay, known as the conversational AI. Second is the executive bots, the ones that actually perform the action. This is the robotic process automation. Interactive bots, common example is your all your bots, your Cortana and your Alexa and all those such human interactive assistants, or even your Hello Google, right? And optimization, wherein the underlying layer, wherein you don't have to keep on hand holding and teaching this bot. They learn by themselves, right? You must have seen all these Alexas of the world or the conversational assistants of the world, they learn by themselves. You don't have to sit and teach them. Over time, they learn the way you pronounce. If you're in India, you have a certain way of speaking, so it will try to understand your conversation, right? It will also learn the local languages like Hindi and learn to reply to you in your language. So all this is part of machine learning, and it gets better over time. Initially, in the beginning, if your phone or your device is new, maybe it will have some challenges in understanding what you really said, but then it learns, right? So this is what these bots will be, how different they will be. Common examples and applications of automation where it will come. Say, for example, in operations management, right? In any industry, you have the logistics and the supply chain. So tracking and tracing, where is my parcel today, right? If some industry wants to look up, there are bots that do that work. They will exactly check the barcode on the parcel that maybe Amazon shipped, and it will go and trace where has it reached today, which city has it reached today, right? It can do that. Planning and scheduling, maintenance and monitoring. There are there's a very big application there in the maintenance area, wherein plant maintenance or maintenance of complex machines can be automated. There are a lot of bots that can do hazardous work, right? That humans may find it challenging. It is there in marketing, it's there in financials, every area, whatever is the routine task that people do, they're trying to send it to the bots. You must have seen during this COVID times, if you log on to any help desk of anything, maybe it could be your bank, it could be your television, that is a Dish TV or Tata Sky. They'll say that okay, our sales representatives are not available because of lockdown. So who replies to you? There is a bot, right? You must have seen it yourself as well. So there is a bot that can at least answer your basic questions. If it's a bank, it will ask you, it will tell you, okay, this is your bank balance, these are the last 5 transactions. So common questions, FAQs, can be answered by these conversational bots, and they are taking away the load from the call center agents. You must have all seen this as well, right? So these are some of the examples of bots. I'll give you an example from my own company, NTT Data. We have our own bots. The one that you see in picture is called SOTA. So SOTA is a bot. It's actually a physical bot. Again, of course, it can be programmed to perform a wide variety of tasks. Okay, it can guide you, it can help you. It's actually a conversational, as well as it kind of leads you through the steps. So if you visit the NTT Data headquarters in Tokyo, SOTA actually serves as the receptionist. He'll guide you where to go, how to get your visitor's badge. He'll make sure that the right person has been informed about your presence. The eyes of the SOTA, of course, are cameras, so it can take an image of you, who you are, where you are, all those things, right? Just an example. Extended application of such robots in Japan, they also use them now in COVID times as assistants to the medical staff. It's so relevant, right? You do need doctors. I'm not saying you're replacing doctors. You do need nurses. But there will be bots who will carry the routine medicines to the infected patients, thus reducing the risk of exposure to human beings, right? So this automation, whether there will be physical bots or there will be small programs resident in your machines, is going to increase in the coming years. Machine learning, right? We briefly saw what it is. It's a scientific study of algorithms and statistical models that systems are using to perform specific tasks. Now, this is one of the fields that's that is in great demand, and it will continue to grow in the coming years, because the ability to, because see now what has changed, I'll just tell you. The data earlier was in short supply. Okay, when I say that is 10 years ago, if you were asked to monitor the temperature in a room, how will you go about it? Maybe you will enter that room and take the temperature, what, once in half an hour, or maybe once an hour. How frequently can you do that, right? So maybe at the end of a 10-hour shift, you'll have 10 readings. This was the temperature at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and so on, right? Now, that task has gradually been replaced by smart devices, right? There is Internet of Things being so prevalent. You have so many devices that can do the job of, maybe recording a temperature, and that machine can do it at maybe every minute, much more frequently. So the number of readings that you will get is huge. There's no shortage there. And with these smart devices, right, it will be basically a smart thermometer installed in the wall, and it will be basically beeping the data either through Bluetooth or anything to the nearest smart device, could be a Raspberry Pi, and from there it beams it to the whole world. So now there is such a huge volume of data. The challenge is, what use can you make out of that data, right? So the ability to study data, find patterns, how are things moving, and then identifying some application out of it. Okay, means when it's afternoon time, maybe the room gets heated more, obviously because of the sunshine. So some things, whatever is happening, you have to draw some insights from the data that is given to you. That field is certainly going to be in a great demand. What are some of the applications? So for example, smart cars. I'll just take an example here. Tesla, right? You have seen Tesla. They are not pioneers in automotive engineering, right? Electric car is also not such a radically new concept. It is not. But Tesla has come up with a concept of connected cars. A car that is fully automatic, it is fully connected, so that every device, every piece of the car is smart. Okay, you can monitor so many parameters, almost like a cockpit of an aeroplane, right? So, and with that, it can make necessary corrections to itself. So, for example, if this seat, if it feels that the seat is little getting warmer and there is direct sunshine falling on the passenger there, maybe it will turn the AC vent automatically in that direction so that the seat gets cooled locally. So many such optimizations can be built into a connected car. You can predict the tire pressure. You look at it. Okay, this was the tire pressure yesterday, and this was it today. Looks like it's decreasing. Looks like there is a leakage. If you don't take action in the next 4 days, there's likely to get a flat tire. All of these are examples of connected cars. In entity data also, we support our own team in the NASCAR racing in the USA, right? So it's a car is built by Honda. The technology is provided by entity data. And in here, not just the car, like I explained, the Tesla car. Not only does the car have sensors all over, it's also the driver. Okay, the driver, the way he sits in his cockpit, he wears a smart T-shirt. There are sensors on his dress, there are sensors on his helmet, there are cameras mounted on the helmet. So the computers see what he sees. They also see him. Is he sweating a lot? What is his heart rate? What is his pulse rate? Is he getting tired? Should we call the car in for a pit stop? Right? Also the tire pressure. Which tire is getting abraded more? Are we turning left or right more? Many things. And all of this analysis. The second thing is, okay, even if this data were available say 10 years ago, you never had the computing power that we have today. The servers and the computing power that is at your disposal, your generation's disposal, was never there. All this analysis in case of a racing car has to be done in real time so that when the driver comes back and finishes a circuit, you should be able to provide fresh recommendations. Right? What is the use that after the race is over, you do a post-mortem and tell the driver, oh, you know what? You should have done this better. That's what used to be done earlier, right? But no longer. Now you absolutely need real-time, uh, real-time analysis, real-time provision of inputs and feedback loop, right? So that's how. These are some of the concepts where these are being applied. There are also the concept of smart cities, entire cities being smart, where cameras take look at what are the traffic patterns and the traffic lights. The duration of how long you have green and red can be altered so that the traffic flow is smoothened. Many things, right? So the applications are endless, and these are the areas that will really be in great demand. IoT, again, we touched upon it. Smart devices, they are almost prevalent everywhere, and they will be there in your consumer space, and they will also be in your workplace as well. In your consumer space, you have already started seeing smart, everything is smart, right? Not just your smartphone, but you have so many devices inside your smartphone, or any set of temperatures. You get home appliances that are smart, that auto dimming lights, lights that can turn on and off based on the ambient conditions outside, air conditioning that can be automated, ACs that can turn on and off on a particular time of the day. And it's more prevalent. Google has acquired a company called Nest. It designs all these applications. So the moment you enter your home, the proximity sensor fitted on your car talks to your home and tells that you are entering. Just 5 minutes before you enter, your ACs go on, so that when you enter your house, it's a cool place for you. So sky is the limit, basically, right? So not only in your personal space, you'll also find the same machines prevalent in industries, in not only in factories but also in offices. You will have IoT prevailing everywhere, right? Common examples, even in an agrarian economy like India, IoT has a tremendous potential in something as basic as farming. There are connected farming solutions, tractors with smart plows, right? A farmer, when he uses a tractor, there are plows, the plow that hits the ground, right, for digging it up. That's the best way to get feedback about the soil condition. You have specific sensors mounted on the plow that can check what is the humidity of the soil, what is the fertility of the soil, right? There is a simple GPS, it knows which location. So, this farmer is maybe in central Maharashtra versus western Maharashtra. The conditions are different. What is the ambient temperature? What's the weather forecast for the next 10 days? Putting all of this together, you can immediately send recommendations to the farmer, right? And a little bit of tweak here and there. What exactly are the nutrients he has to add, and what crops are the most suitable for him? It can dramatically change the face of farming as we know it. This is just an example. Sky is the limit. So IoT will be one of the another critical areas that will be really shaping the future of the planet. And then big data and overview. We talked about big data in a way. This is, as I said, large volumes of data that are coming out. How effectively can you mine that data and make meaningful insights out of it, and then design some extremely helpful new offerings to the customer based on that usage, right? So that is also one of the very innovative ways in which companies are coming up. And if you can come up with such innovative ideas, the sky is the limit, let me tell you. And it does not have to be a new R&D technology. What did Ola and Uber do? What was they just use your phones? The GPS functionality on the phones has been there forever. Now, just making use of that application and just mining it in a specific way, they kind of match you, pair you to the nearest set of drivers, and that's all. A new model is born. correct? Likewise, some other examples here. There are some fashion stores. This example is from the US, H&M for example. It If you download the H&M app on your phone, it tries to capture all your preferences. It more or less it studies you rather than just pushing you. Okay, these are the 15 brands which are on sale. That's how you see on Amazon today, right? But much more individuality will creep up. Even Amazon will adapt to it, right? So it will find out where you are, what's your location, what's the local weather, what's your lifestyle like, right? What are your photographs, what best suits you, where you eat, work, shop, everything. And based on that, it creates something called a data dress, right? The costumes that will be more suitable for a lifestyle or a personality of your types. And you will get very, very specific recommendations. That way, you don't have to scroll through 1,000 options to find the right dress. It will recommend you the right dress. How is that possible? So it's wide variety of data about you, where you live, what you wear, do you socialize, what are the groups that you join, right? All of that put together can help this algorithm suggest dresses for you. So the sky is limit. Another very common thing, I'm sure most of you or many of you are fans of Starbucks and such other coffee shops where you get the same coffee for 200 rupees that you can get on the roadside for maybe 20 rupees, right? So why the premium? They try to sell experience. It's not just selling coffee, we are selling experience, right? So Starbucks has been at the forefront of all this. They have always been techno savvy organization, and Starbucks was the first in the whole world to offer free Wi-Fi in all of their cafes. When Wi-Fi and internet was a very, very rare and a precious thing, they started with that. So actually, if you look at it, the most popular loyalty apps in the world today is Starbucks, followed by Domino's and Pizza Hut. But Starbucks is way, way ahead of everybody. Again, because they use a lot of smart data mining, they kind of keep a track of same what you like, what did you order the previous time. If you have the app, they can really give you a very customized user experience. You can get such customized messages. You are nearing the Starbucks on Oxford Street. Currently, you are having 50% off on your favorite drink, vanilla latte. It tells you so much about what Starbucks knows about you. Because you ordered vanilla latte, probably they know that you like it, right? So a lot of digital shopping, and I would say that a coffee shop becomes a digital shop just through digital transformation, right? These things is just creative application of existing technology. Okay, so that covers broadly what are the you know uh, what are the trends or the areas of industry that the industry is looking at today, and that are really changing the business models everywhere. And now the main question, impact on the jobs of tomorrow. How will it really impact you, right? So we'll briefly talk about two kinds of impact. Impact of artificial intelligence or impact of this digital transformation. You should understand that yes, there will be job loss. Human jobs will be lost and bots will take up some of these routine tasks. But at the same time, know the fact that only routine repetitive jobs will be lost. And in net, if you look at it, there will be increase in employment. Let me give an example. Again, Ola and Uber. Can you say that it led to a job loss of auto drivers? Probably yes. But at the same time, it gave birth to a whole new industry of car driving people, right? The taxis, the cars that you see on the road have gone up and they are driven by technology. They can avail of flexible working hours. They are burning less fuel, just waiting for customers on the side of the road, right? And offering convenience. So it's a win-win for everybody. The advent of e-commerce in India, say like Amazon and Flipkart, has given birth to totally new jobs, that of delivery boy. right? They have innovated. They use bikes in India. They don't use cars or trucks as they use in the US. New jobs will be produced. Where some jobs, yes, would be lost. People are visiting shops lesser and shopping more online. This might have resulted in some shops closing down and people losing some jobs there. But totally new jobs are created somewhere else down the line. So only routine repetitive jobs will be lost to bots. But so in your programming parlance, if you are a programmer today and if the task you're performing is very routine, chances are you may lose it to a bot that does the same job. So keep on moving up and up the ladder into niche areas where your job will be more secure. And 10 new things are going to open up tomorrow. Rest assured, right? So resources will be directed to more and more productive tasks. So make sure you are one of those who is performing those new productive tasks where innovation, human decision making skills are required, right? Third, the rate of innovation and the risk of obsolescence is only going to get higher and faster in the years to come. What we saw today is almost an exponential curve, the way it goes up, right? So this is going to happen. So don't ever be resting on your laurels. Don't feel that, okay, I am now an engineer, I'm great, right? No, not the case. Keep on learning, keep an eye open on what's new. Even I do it today after so many years in the industry. I have to keep myself up to date with everything. Remember, when I graduated, there was no concept called IoT or no concept called ML or all this blah blah that I did in the last half an hour. These things didn't even exist. They were in movies, perhaps, sci-fi movies. Okay, totally new jobs will arise, and it's how quickly you grasp that. It also gives you a lot of opportunity. Maybe you missed this wave, but you can still learn something new and catch up for what you lost. Right? The second set of impact is the impact of COVID. This is a very contemporary slide. That this question I get being asked a lot by students now facing this uncertainty. So one common thing that you must have seen on the social media, when questioned who led the digital transformation of your company, did the CEO push you? Did the CTO push you? The answer is COVID-19 pushed me. So many companies, even in India, look at your own life, look at your own personal life in India. The COVID has certainly disrupted life, but it has from a computer science engineer or an IT professional, it's a boon. It's a boon. It has transformed people and it has promoted digital transformation like nothing before. Okay, look at education. Would have education institutions moved to online platform at this rate? No, never. It has become, and we are now comfortable with it, having virtual teachers, virtual lectures, virtual webinars, right? Education became online. Digital payments. 3 years ago, we had the demonetization drive, right? Where people didn't have cash in hand, but still in that time there were some shopkeepers who were reluctant to accept Paytm and digital payment platforms. But today, the same shopkeeper or even a vegetable vendor is ready to take Phone Pay and Google Pay because he feels, oh, that note is a little dirty and I'm afraid of getting infected. So yesterday's Times of India says that the entire digital target for the entire fiscal year 2000 has already been met in 3 years, in 3 months. 4,500 crores turnover has been crossed in India only through these digital payment gateways, right? So don't we, whereas it is very natural to blame COVID for a lot of disruption, it has been an excellent opportunity, right? So grasp this opportunity. You have also great opportunity there for yourself, right? Secondly, COVID taught us the lesson that human substitutes are also extremely important. Human, the assistants or substitutes for human beings is extremely important. Examples are drones. You must have seen even the police and law enforcement agencies have extensively used drones. So the application of these robots and robotic devices is extremely important. I also give you the example of nursing assistants using bots to serve medicines to the COVID positive patient. That's a very, I mean, of course, you have to invest in that infrastructure beforehand, but suddenly people are now aware, oh, yes, if I don't have substitutes, my industry can get shut down when there is a lockdown. But if my industry is automated, I don't have to worry. I really don't have to worry. Correct? So the third point, boost for automation, like I said. Now, if the importance of autonomous vehicles, trucks that can drive themselves, a lot of research is going on, and there are already being prototypes being tested in some of the countries in Europe and America. So autonomous vehicles, they can be the pillars of the supply chain. Who cares if there is a lockdown there? The truck drives itself, and you will still get your food and your groceries on time. The concept of dark factories, factories that can operate without any lights, because everything is automated. There are only robots from one end to the other. So people are really investing in these options today because having human beings is leading to job loss. We saw that production loss. So whoever is able to maintain their supply chain and production in these times will succeed. So that is the driver of automation, right? If you example is just if you can Google up Amazon's warehouses in the US, just take a look at that. Okay, it's a completely, when I say completely, it's a completely automated warehouse. Only bots moving in between the aisles of the warehouse, and the another set of bots moving up and down to go up to the right pallet, pick up your stuff, and bring it up. Completely automated. It's possible. And that's how the world will move to, is what I feel. And the fourth one, impact that we all have to, we are experiencing and we have to watch out for is uh, the impact of work location and new project delivery models because of scattered teams. You must have read in the news that many companies are working from home. They are already successful in working from home. No deliverables have been impacted. Customers are happy. So this might become a norm. All those IT parks and some certain cities in India where IT was in boom, right? Like Pune, Bangalore, for example, Hyderabad, may lose their premium status. Now you can live in any small village of India or town as long as you have a robust 4G or a 5G connection, you are productive. That changes the rules of the game completely. Think about it, right? But then in such a scattered environment, how will you collaborate with your peers? How will you learn from each other? We'll have to see. How do you interact with your customers in such cases, right? All these questions are there. So again, I won't publish an exhaustive list, or I would say exactly these are the areas that are in demand, but here are some of the roles that are likely to be in demand in the coming decade. Okay, artificial intelligence architect, right? Again, this slide is more of a conclusion of what we have discussed in the last half an hour. So an architect is a person who will be able to design new applications of artificial intelligence. The technology is there, finding out creative ways in which it can be applied. Right? So, what will be the skills? Machine learning, natural language programming, and artificial intelligence application programming. If you have these skills, certainly you are in very good shape, right, for this job. And business intelligence analyst. Again, your ability to draw analysis, there is huge volume of data there. If you have analytics and report mastery of reporting tools, you are good. Online analytical programming skills, database skills, ability to extract information or mine data that is stored in huge, large volume databases, maybe cloud based. All of those skills will be in great demand. The business intelligence analyst, as I call it. Cloud architecture. Of course, more and more businesses will move from the on-premise world to the cloud. That's for sure. And again, they've through this COVID crisis also they understood that they can have the cloud instances many places in the world, so that if one particular country or region gets impacted by a disaster, there are options everywhere else, right? So development of cloud apps, your ability to handle multiple operating systems, and networking and security. That's going to be one of the big areas wherein you secure all these smart devices and servers that are housed virtually and have a secure communication lines itself is a very big ask. Okay, so cloud architecture, then data analysts, data scientists. Here is a blend of people with mathematical knowledge as well, right? So mathematics, statistics, the statisticians also will come and blend with computer science graduates in creating a pool of data analysts. So data scientists and analytical minded people can would also be in great demand. Now you see it has given rise to courses in even in the pure sciences side. People are going for BSc with mathematics and with great emphasis on statistics, right? Just targeting this particular band of jobs. DevOps engineers, one of the upcoming areas because the sizes, this is again more from enterprises, right? For companies, large organizations, the footprint of their databases and the footprint of the solution, number of solutions that they have today is so huge, so mind-boggling that it's extremely difficult to even manage and maintain it. So they need a quicker, agile methodology wherein new enhancements and new innovations can be built in and the existing operations can be maintained. So development and operations, DevOps, and all the tools that are needed in this DevOps cycle, if you know that, you're in very good books. Right? Again, I've just listed them down in just as the thoughts came to mind, and this is not any specific order of or sequence in which they are there. But look at such areas and try if you're not if you feel that you don't have adequate skills in any of these areas, you can choose to learn more, right? So those are technical skills. There are also always some uh, trends or traits that people have. And what I have seen over the years is the people having these traits are likely to succeed more in life. Okay, it's not just your academic records and the number of courses you have done, but how innovative you are. Keep on asking yourself, how can I apply new ideas to solve old problems? Okay, or these problems could be even unstated problems. Nobody went and told Steve Jobs that I want exactly a smartphone I can carry in my pocket and it should have this. No, he just, it was his imagination. He was able to visualize and come up with a device that people would love, right? So be an innovator. I would strongly recommend that. Be the Kaizen man. Kaizen is the Japanese philosophy of small incremental improvements. I believe you would have heard about this. And so Kaizen is people who can carry out, small scale stepwise improvement. So whatever work you are in or whatever role has been given to you, how can I make it slightly better? How can I make it faster, little bit more efficient? How can I eliminate some waste here? Right? If you have that mentality at the back of your mind, there are creative ways. Okay, so keep on taking small steps to improvement. You can add a lot of value in this way. The automator. The automator is a person who always thinks about automation. Whatever task you are doing, of course, it's part of your job profile, you will have to do it. But keep on thinking, can my task be automated? Okay, is there too many variations in it or is it a simple path? You do this step, then you do this step, then if this happens, do you do this? If no, then do that. Keep on thinking on those lines. Can it be automated? You be the driver of automation rather than one day a bot comes and takes away your job. You be the person who drives automation, right? Be a learner and a mentor. I always emphasize on these two things. What's new? How can I learn it? How can I teach? Why do I teach people today? I teach because I learn when I teach. By sharing your thoughts and your ideas with others, you really get to learn a lot. So be a teacher, learner, and a mentor. Don't try to hoard information. It's stupid. Don't think that I have some specific information. Okay, let me hide from my friends. They are on Google. People will learn, right? Better you teach it. Collaborator. This is where I'm saying that it's a little bit tricky. We'll have to see how this field evolves. But how you collaborate and learn as a team is extremely important. But in a post-COVID scenario and scattered teams, it will have its own challenges. The decision maker, right? Your ability to make the right decisions on maybe the spur of the moment is also going to be important. And there are tools to support you. So it's not just your innate ability, but there will be tools that help decision making, tools that predict trends, that can extrapolate things, right? How effectively you make use of all of this is likely to determine how you succeed in life. Okay, so we're almost at the end of this session. Just a couple of slides on a slightly different note, soft skills. Okay, we're talking here about how to succeed in life, right? Success doesn't always mean that how do you develop some technical skills and managerial skills. That's not adequate. The stress levels in your generation are going to be extremely high. Competition and change will always keep you on your toes. It will always keep you stressed. That's unfortunate, but it's true. And your emotional intelligence, your ability to manage all of this will also be thoroughly tested. We have seen so many cases where people have been successful, but they don't know how to digest the success. Either they have developed physical ailments in 30s and 40s, people are collapsing out of heart attacks and cardiac arrests and BPs, or there are people who are going into clinical depression, right? People who are so isolated in their successful world that they don't know what to do with the success, with the wealth, with the power that they've got. This is an extremely tragic and a sad thing. So don't take this lightly as well. It's very natural at this stage of youth. You feel that no, we can really nothing can damage me, but that's not the case. So I always advise my students that take up de-stressing now. You start investing it now. You cannot start digging a well after your house is on fire. It's too late. Right? Invest in exercises, invest in yoga, in meditation. There are many effective courses for students, specifically designed for young executives also. Right? So you and never lose that human touch that you have inside you. Okay, you can be extremely aggressive, ambitious uh, executives of tomorrow, but learn to help others. Learn to take your team together. There is difference between being manager and being a leader. Try to be leader, be a mentor, be a coach to people. Always give back to the society. Think of ways and means in which you can help everybody, including your colleagues, including those in the office, your customers. Be ethical, right? These things will never go out of fashion. They are extremely important. And if you want to reach out to me, please reach out to me. I'll be glad to direct you, to help you with such courses, where such courses are conducted. And I personally spend a lot of my time in living stress free. Okay, so it's not just something that I preach, I practice it. I still spend 1 hour of my day on with myself. I work with myself. The first hour of the morning is for me. No matter if I have to travel, if I have to have an international travel, if I have meetings, no matter what, 1 hour is for me. And that's how, I will suggest all of you to do the same, right? So I'll conclude with a famous quote from Sri Ravi Shankar. He says, there's a balance in life. Passion when you work, do it with full passion. Love your job. Dispassion when you turn inwards, that's when you meditate. Just drop everything and relax fully. Meditation could be anything, it does not have to be that you have to sit in a particular posture and do it. It could be music, it could be anything that relaxes you and you just move out of the routine, right? So, passion, dispassion, and compassion. Have compassion for others, okay? And that will, along with your technical skills and the soft skills, together can shape your lives and make you extremely successful. I'm very sure of that. Okay. So with that, I'm at the end of my presentation. So thank you. And let's see if we can take some questions now. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashutosh sir, for giving the entire insights and helping the students. And the best part is the last slide, which you have told the students about the soft skills, the stress management, the cutthroat competition which is happening into the industry. So students have to tackle with this thing, and they have to be mentally healthy onto this thing, and how to handle the stress. That was most important for these students. So I just request the students, if you have any doubts, any questions, please put it onto the chat box so that Ashutosh sir will easily answer the same.
Yeah, there's one thing I would like to say to all the students. It's not possible to answer all the questions now, right? And there might be some questions that you might come up with later after you think about it as well. So I'll strongly encourage you to connect with me. I'm there on LinkedIn, right? We can always meet up there. And if you have any questions, you can follow my blog, you can follow my articles, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions there as well. Okay?